Farewell to Ornella Vanoni, the Italian singer, actress, and presenter, unforgettable interpreter of masterpieces such as Senza Fine and I Will Give You More, passed away this evening. She was 91 years old, and with her departure, Italy loses not just a voice, not simply a public figure, but an entire era shaped by elegance, vulnerability, courage, poetry, and that soft yet unmistakable tone that generations grew up with. Ornella Vanoni was one of those rare artists whose presence reached far beyond stages and screens. She entered homes, hearts, and memories, becoming part of people's personal stories. Her passing is not just news, it is the closing of a chapter that shaped Italian culture for decades. Ornella died the way she lived, privately, gracefully, and without spectacle. According to the first reports, she collapsed in her home in Milan due to cardiac arrest earlier tonight. Emergency services arrived quickly, but by the time they reached her, she was already gone. For a woman whose entire life revolved around emotions, singing them, bodying them, confessing them, perhaps it is fitting that her heart was what ultimately gave out. But the irony feels unfair, almost cruel, because Ornella's heart had always seemed too big for one lifetime. It carried stories of love, heartbreak, resilience, reinvention, friendship, solitude, and artistry. Even in her later years, as she appeared with her silver hair, her large sunglasses, and her playful sense of humor, she stayed unmistakably herself, sharp, warm, rebellious, fragile, and bold all at once. She was one of the last true divas of Italian music, not diva in the sense of arrogance or distance, but in the sense of a woman who crafted her identity through art, who lived with intensity, and who performed with a sincerity that no one could imitate. To understand what Italy loses with her passing, one must understand what she represented. She was born in Milan in 1934, a time when Italy itself was changing and rebuilding. Her early years were marked by discipline, structure, and study, but even then, the seeds of a performer were present. She had a sensitivity that made her feel the world in a way most did not. And this sensitivity later became the foundation of her artistry. When she entered the world of entertainment in the 1950s, she did so not as a conventional beauty or a traditional singer, but as a woman with depths, someone who could translate complex emotions into simple, haunting notes. Senza Fine was one of the songs that defined her. The kind of track that stops time, that lingers in the air long after the last note fades. Through songs like that, she became the voice of longing, the sound of quiet melancholia, the soundtrack of romantic souls who felt too much and too deeply. But Ornella was never limited to one style. She embraced jazz, pop, folk, experimental music. She collaborated with giants Gino Paoli, Vinicius de Moraes, Paolo Frisu. She reinvented herself countless times, proving that artistry is not a static identity but a lifelong evolution. Offstage, she was just as fascinating. Ornella's personal life was filled with intense loves and painful heartbreaks. Her relationship with Gino Paoli became legendary, not just because of its romance, but because of the emotional fire that fueled both their careers. She spoke openly about love, sex, loneliness, depression, and aging long before it was considered acceptable. In doing so, she earned not only admiration, but affection. She felt relatable, human, approachable. People saw reflections of their own experiences in her stories. She was glamorous, yes, but also real. Her performances were never just performances. They were confessions, emotional offerings. When she sang, she didn't merely use her voice. She used her entire being. She leaned into a lyric like she was living it for the first time, even if she had sung it thousands of times before. She had a way of pausing at the right moment, of letting silence speak, of making the audience hold its breath. Her voice wasn't powerful in the traditional sense. It was powerful in the emotional sense. It carried vulnerability. And vulnerability is often more impactful than perfection, even in her 80s and 90s. She remained relevant. Younger generations discovered her through interviews where she charmed viewers with her brutal honesty, her humor, and her refusal to pretend. She spoke openly about aging, how it frightened her, how it softened her, how it changed her priorities. She discussed her struggles with depression, the importance of therapy, the battles she fought with herself throughout her life. In doing so, she became something rare, an elderly woman in entertainment who wasn't afraid to exist fully, without filters, without manufactured image. Tonight, as news of her passing spread, tributes began pouring in from artists, actors, journalists, and fans who had grown up with her music. Comedian and actress Luciana Lattisetto was among the first to react publicly, honoring Ornella with heartfelt words. Lattisetto, who had a warm and humorous relationship with Vanoni, expressed a grief that many share because losing Ornella feels strangely personal. It feels like losing a relative, an old friend, a wise yet mischievous aunt who always had something witty to say. But the truth is, Ornella was all of these things to Italy. She was a constant presence, shaping the cultural landscape for nearly 7 decades. She was part of the collective memory those songs played at weddings, breakups, dinners, long drives, slow dances, lonely nights, and meaningful mornings. Her voice was woven into everyday life. Her career was equally impressive on stage and on screen. As an actress, she brought depth and sophistication to her roles. She had a natural talent for drama and comedy alike, something that few performers master with equal confidence. Her theater work, particularly in her early years, showcased her versatility. Her television appearances, whether in interviews, variety shows, or documentaries, highlighted her charisma and quick wit. And then there was the activism. Ornella spoke out about social issues long before it was common in Italian entertainment. She advocated for women's rights, spoke against hypocrisy, fought for mental health awareness, and wasn't afraid to challenge political systems. She had a rebellious streak that never faded, even as she aged. She once said that the older she became, the less she cared about what people thought of her. That freedom gave her a freshness that made her beloved by new generations. In her final years, she spent more time in her home in Milan, enjoying quiet moments, painting, writing, and reflecting. She gave interviews where she expressed gratitude for her life, but also admitted to fear of mortality, of loneliness, of the unknown. She was candid about these feelings, reminding everyone that even icons are human. And perhaps that humanity is what made her so timeless. Tonight, her home in Milan stands silent, but her presence fills the city. On social media, fans are sharing recordings of her interviews, clips of her concerts, photos of her from every stage of life. Young Ornella, glamorous Ornella, heartbroken Ornella, wise Ornella. And all these images come together to form a portrait of a woman who lived fully, who embraced passion even when it hurt, who never apologized for being emotional or complicated. Her departure marks the end of an era. But her legacy is not fragile. It will not fade quietly. Her songs will continue to play. Her performances will continue to inspire. Her interviews will continue to entertain and comfort. She leaves behind a catalog of music that spans generations and styles, a body of work that refuses to age. Perhaps the most painful part of her passing is the thought of her absence, the realization that Italy will no longer hear her voice in new interviews, that her laughter will no longer echo through talk shows, that her candid commentary on life will no longer brighten television screens. But her authenticity lives on. She taught people to be brave with their emotions, to accept their fragilities, to wear their hearts openly.